A strong infrastructure.
I call the member for Fremantle.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And look, proper infrastructure investment is vital. It's vital because it removes capacity constraints, it boosts productivity, it supports jobs in the short, medium and long term. And it's particularly important in Western Australia at the moment because of the prevailing economic conditions. We're in recession in Western Australia. We have very, very high unemployment, and the unemployment is getting worse month by month. We need investment in infrastructure. Any investment in infrastructure, frankly, a bit of improper investment in infrastructure wouldn't be too bad. We are getting nothing. Of the 78 road and rail projects promised by the coalition at the last election, 73 out of 78 went elsewhere. 5 came to WA, 4% came to Western Australia. The regional jobs and investment package announced last week, which is specifically intended to deal with areas facing economic transition and unemployment, $220 million, 10 projects, not a single one for Western Australia, even though parts of Western Australia that would be eligible under that program have 3 times the unemployment than some of the areas that received funding. And what makes all of this all the more bitter if you're from Western Australia is that we were told by the member for Warringah when he was the Prime Minister that he would be the infrastructure Prime Minister. Yet as the infrastructure Prime Minister, that would be his epithet. That's what would ring down the ages.
Good government starts today.
That's right. Good government hasn't started yet in Western Australia, and state government, good government, won't start until the 11th of March at the earliest. But as the member for Grainler pointed out, there has not been a single quarter. The highest infrastructure spend under this government, its best quarter, is worse than the lowest quarter of infrastructure spending under the former Labor government. It's meant to be a government for jobs and growth. Unemployment is higher under this government. Growth has been lower under this government. In Western Australia, we've had 23 months of falling full-time employment. We are in recession and inequality is at a 75-year high. The Prime Minister might not be aware. His answer at the dispatch box today gave every impression that he's not aware of what's going on in Western Australia. He hasn't been to WA in 6 months, Deputy Speaker. So we get the double whammy. We get the invisible gifts of the infrastructure Prime Minister, and we get the incredibly dissolving promises of the public transport Premier, a Premier who has gone to the ballot box in the past promising the Ellenbrook rail extension, which hasn't been delivered, promising Max Light Rail, which has not been delivered. And so for us in Western Australia, as I said at the beginning, it's not really about whether or not you invest properly in infrastructure in Western Australia, it's whether you invest at all. There has been 2/5 of nothing for the people of Western Australia. Right. No public transport, no congestion-busting projects like Community Connect South, no properly delivered broadband, no investment in projects like the second stage of the floating dock. The only prospect of funding we have is in the horrible, ridiculous, monstrous shape of the Perth Freight Link, and you would struggle to find a better example of an improperly planned and provided infrastructure funding than that ridiculous road. Maybe the East-West Link. The most expensive road in WA's history, a privately operated toll road that does not even reach the port, a road that goes nowhere, a road that came out of nowhere. When it was announced in the 2014 federal budget, the Parliamentary Secretary for Transport in Western Australia said, "The Commonwealth has a propensity to make these announcements, as you well know, but the reality is that the Main Roads Department and this government will be implementing and designing the road extension, and at this stage we've not actually got design plans that are worthy of public scrutiny." And when the then Labor spokesperson, the wonderful Ken Travers, asked whether the Commonwealth had had any conversations about the Perth Freight Link with the WA government, the West Australian spokesman said, "Well, maybe that's a question you should be asking Commonwealth Government representative." Well, Deputy Speaker, today the Prime Minister and the Minister for Regional Infrastructure came to the dispatch box, and what did they know about the Perth Freight Link? They knew 2 things. They knew the dollar figure and they knew the name. And some of the times they didn't even get the name right. That's all they know about the most expensive road project in Western Australia's history, the only project that has any Commonwealth infrastructure funds attached to it. We have copped for too long, Deputy Speaker, state and federal coalition governments that have failed to invest in infrastructure in WA properly or at all. We've copped state and federal coalition governments that take Western Australia for granted. This week we're seeking long overdue reform to so-called parliamentary entitlements. We desperately need reform to the sense of entitlement the coalition has in relation to Western Australia at the ballot box.
I call